I was brushing frosting off my hands when the message came in. Not a call, not a voicemail, just a cold, emotionless wall of text from my mother at 11:51 p.m. Less than 24 hours before my 18th birthday party. The first and only event I had ever planned for myself. We have to cancel tomorrow. Courtney is devastated about the Sephora deal falling through. We need to hold space for her grief. Please understand. Courtney was my older sister, 26 influencer, full-time crisis generator. Her entire personality was built like an IKEA shelf, shiny on the outside, hollow in the middle, and held together by other people's labor. Her devastating crisis. A $2,000 hair vitamin brand deal falling through, not my birthday party. 6 months of planning. My money, my guest list. My one day I didn't reply. I didn't argue. I didn't even blink. Instead, I walked to the window and watched the catering van, the one I had booked in September, slowly exit our driveway. And with those receding headlights, something inside me went dark. Not sadness. Not anger. Finality. That was the moment the daughter they knew died. And the girl who would dismantle their entire dynasty opened her eyes. Most people don't understand how a family collapses from the inside. To understand my fire, you need to understand the architecture of the house I grew up in. Buckhead, Atlanta, a neighborhood where the lawns were precisely cut, but the emotions were not. Our home was massive, white pillars, marble floors, a chandelier so tall it needed its own insurance policy. But inside, there was no warmth, no softness, no affection. My parents, Jeffrey and Cynthia, didn't raise children. They raised assets. Courtney was the showpiece. It's a curated porcelain doll they paraded at charity events, fashion brunches, influencer mixers. They pushed money into her like investors shoveling cash into a failing startup. And me. I was Morgan, the invisible infrastructure. The girl in the shadows. The responsible one. The fixer. The human duct tape that held the entire ecosystem together at 14. I was managing the household budget because my father couldn't figure out Excel at 15. I was ghostwriting Courtney's college essays because she thought comma splices were a pastry. At 16, I was scheduling my mother's Botox appointments and my father's medication reminders. By 17, I wasn't a daughter. I was a load-bearing wall in a collapsing museum. Courtney received a $6,500 monthly allowance to maintain her brand. I got nothing. I worked nights as a virtual assistant just to buy my AP textbooks. When I asked for help with tuition, my father said, struggle builds character. When Courtney wanted $18,000 Italian furniture for her bedroom renovation, my mother said it's an investment in her image. This was my life. Courtney's whims were emergencies. My emergencies were inconveniences, but I didn't fight it. Not because I agreed, but because of something psychologists call the fawn response, a survival instinct where you appease the people who hurt you so they won't hurt you more. Childhood taught me one thing. Love was conditional. Affection was earned. And my value was tied to my usefulness. I truly believed that if I worked hard enough, fixed enough things, stayed quiet long enough, they would finally see me. My labor wasn't love. It was rent. But the birthday text? That was the eviction notice. The morning of my 18th birthday, the house was empty. My parents had taken Courtney to a spa retreat to nurture her emotional wounds. They left a card on the kitchen counter, bland, impersonal, with a $50 bill like I was a waitress finishing a shift. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I didn't even feel angry. Instead, I moved with surgical calm for 6 months. I had quietly transferred my important belongings to a secret storage unit. That morning, I finished the job. I wiped every device in the house, deleted every spreadsheet, every password vault, every automated system I had built over the years, then left the house key on the counter next to a single sheet of paper. Every password I had changed, every account I had disconnected, every system I had shut down, and at the bottom, I resigned from the position of daughter. I walked out of that mansion without looking back. I didn't feel homeless. I felt free. Asterisk for the first week, my phone didn't ring once. They weren't worried. They weren't panicked. They weren't sad. They were waiting for me to crawl back in the story they'd written. I was the disobedient child having a tantrum. Hunger, loneliness, or guilt would drag me home. The empire would continue. The machine would resume, but the machine had lost its engine. On day 7, the cracks appeared. The Wi-Fi at the estate went down. My father called me 3 times, the man who had never once answered my texts in under 4 hours. He didn't leave a voicemail, but I knew exactly what the problem was. He didn't know the password. He didn't know the provider. He didn't know how to reset the router. I ignored the calls. 2 days later, Courtney had a meltdown. She missed a flight to Tulum, a brand trip she had been bragging about for weeks. For years, I handled her travel, her reminders, her check-ins. Left to her own devices, she showed up at the wrong terminal. 3 hours late. On the wrong day, she left me a voicemail full of screaming. "You ruined my career. You did this on purpose." No, sweetheart. This was simply what your life looks like without me running it. Then the real collapse began. My father missed a crucial dinner with an angel. Fester, the kind of meeting that could shift an entire business. I used to send his confirmations, prep his talking points, Kinchi's calendar with alarms. Without me, he didn't even realize he had a meeting. Investors pulled out. Rumors spread. Their curated image began to crack. My mother left a voicemail full of venom. "This house is falling apart and you are playing games. Come home and fix this. Fix this. Not come home, not we love you, just fix." They didn't miss me. They missed the labor. And as the systems I created malfunctioned, bill payments, social schedules, brand contracts, doctor reminders, the empire rotted in real time. For the first time in my life, I wasn't dragging them uphill. I was watching them slide downward on their own incompetence. 12 months passed. Silence grew thick. My number faded from their phones. Meanwhile, my life bloomed. I finished my degree early. I graduated summa cum laude, alone but proud. By 21, I was an operations lead at a fintech startup earning 6 figures. I built savings, a credit score, a life. Then came the day everything shifted. I applied for a loft in Midtown, exposed brick, city skyline, the kind of place I used to dream about. The leasing agent ran my credit, smiling, until the smile evaporated. She whispered, "I'm so sorry. You're flagged. Massive outstanding debt." My stomach dropped. I walked out, opened my laptop, and checked my credit report for new accounts. 3 high-limit credit cards. 1 personal loan, total debt, $280,000. Opened within weeks of my leaving home. The transactions were unmistakably Courtney's Tulum retreat, wardrobe overhaul, G-Wagon lease, luxury club tabs, designer bags. They hadn't just used my name. They had stolen my identity, and in their twisted logic, they thought this wasn't theft. It was reimbursement. They believed I owed them this, that my departure was betrayal, that draining my credit was payback, that I wasn't a daughter, I was a resource. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. Instead, I felt a cold clarity settle into my bones. They had crossed from cruelty into criminality, and they bet I would stay silent. They bet wrong. I called a forensic accountant. I hired a lawyer, a specialist in family fraud. We built a case with obsessive precision. Then we served them. Not a warning, not a conversation. A lawsuit, fraud, identity theft, emotional distress, damages. Buckhead society exploded with gossip. Investors fled. Friends disappeared. The empire disintegrated. And then they came to me. 2 weeks after being served, my building's doorman buzzed my apartment. "Your parents are downstairs." I told him to send them up when the elevator doors opened. They looked like ghosts of themselves, pale, hollow, deflated. The arrogance had drained out of them, replaced by desperation. My father, usually rigid and polished, stood there in a wrinkled suit. My mother's mascara had carved black rivers down her cheeks. They stepped into my loft, my space, my life, my success, and I watched them crumble. My father spoke first, voice cracking, please. Please drop the lawsuit. We could lose everything. I could go to jail. I waited for anger to rise. It didn't. I waited for satisfaction. Nothing I felt. Neutral, indifferent, the opposite of love isn't hate. Hate is emotional. Hate means you still care. Indifference is freedom, I said. Calmly, I'm not dropping the lawsuit. My mother sobbed harder, collapsing onto my couch as though the cushions could rescue her. She whispered through shaking breaths. Where will we go? What about Courtney? I blinked slowly. That, I said, is not my problem. But I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. I was simply done. I offered a settlement. They would sell the house, sell the cars, sell the furniture, pay the full $280,000 immediately, sign a written confession to clear my credit, sign a no-contact agreement if they ever reached out again. I would pursue criminal charges without hesitation. My mother broke. My father caved. They signed. 6 months later, I drove past the mansion I once maintained like unpaid staff. A sold sign stood in the yard. A moving truck idled in the driveway. My parents carried boxes to a rented U-Haul. Courtney sat on the curb, staring at her phone, looking for someone new to blame. I didn't stop. I didn't wave. I didn't feel triumphant. I just kept driving. Today, I have no parents. No sister, no inherited obligations. No unpaid emotional invoices. What I have is better. A home I pay for. A career I built. A life without manipulation. A peace so deep it feels like oxygen. If you've ever had to burn a bridge to save yourself, you're not alone. And if you're still standing there holding the match, light it. There's peace waiting on the other side.